Joining us now is Hyatt President and CEO Mark Huplamazian. Thank you very much, Mark, for joining us. What's going on with demand right now for travelers?
Demand has been on a steady recovery since the lows in the second quarter. April was sort of mid-single-digit occupancies. They've now recovered to mid-20s to maybe low 30s, depending on where you are. They've been progressing, and as we look across the globe, they've been highest, and the recovery has been underway the longest in China, for example, where in July and heading into August we saw occupancies that were in the 60s. We're seeing some recovery that's been relatively good. It's been driven by leisure, of course, but that's what we're seeing.
How much of your business is business travel, and how do you plan? When is that going to actually come back, and is it going to come back in full?
It will come back for sure, and the composition might look different, but for us, about 45% of our demand around the world comes from leisure travelers, and 55% from corporate travel, business travel, as well as large groups, conventions and exhibitions and the like. And if you look, most of the demand driver in this year so far in the recovery period has been from leisure demand. I would say the one exception, again, is China, where we see, as occupancy started to verge into the 60s, we saw business demand coming back. And of that total occupancy, business demand represented over 25% of that total, 25 to 30%. So business demand has come back. I think as you look more broadly across the globe, it will take some time for business demand to return. People have to be able to get back on planes, for example, and start flying across the world again. But we believe that while the composition will change, some use cases will modify based on hybrid meetings or different processes that companies are putting into place. We do think that ultimately demand does recover. There's a tremendous pent-up demand for it.
Mark, you mentioned you need people to get back on planes. Do you think that is the bigger problem for you right now than your customers fearing going into a hotel or a hotel room? Are they actually quite relaxed about the cleanliness and safety of being in the hotel? It's just that the means to get there are something they're still nervous about.
Well, I think for business travel, for sure, air travel is a key component of that. When you look at occupancies across the entire industry in the United States, they're running about 6 or 7 points lower in the top 25 markets than they are for the country. And the reason for that is because business travel is at historically low levels, and because international arrivals have basically collapsed. They're virtually at a de minimis level, not almost unmeasurable. So it will take some time, and I think it's familiarity. It's knowing someone or having someone that you do business with, having traveled and giving you a direct report, or you actually having traveled yourself. The usage rate and therefore trial rate is still low. Only a third of Americans have taken a trip that's involved an overnight stay since March. And only 38% of Americans think that they're going to travel between now and the end of the year. So we need more people to actually have the experience, because airlines have done an extraordinary job of making that experience safe. And so too as the hotel industry at large, and we have through very planful and deliberate processes and procedures that we put into place.
Mark, I don't know if you saw, I'm sure you saw Hilton Hotel Times Square set to close. That was big news today. Obviously, Manhattan is getting hit pretty hard. 200 layoffs along with that announcement. My question to you really is what the permanent damage is going to be to your industry. How many fewer hotels we're going to see in major urban spots like Manhattan, and how many of this job losses, which your industry has been hit particularly hard, are going to be permanent?
Yeah, it's a little difficult to say what proportion will be permanent. If you look today as a snapshot, about 4 in 10, 40% of the workforce in hotels is not working right now. So it's pretty significant and severe. And to your question, I think there are certain markets that will take some time, maybe a longer period of time to recover. Manhattan is living through, I think, an adjustment period to some supply demand that we experienced in New York over the last several years. And also, New York, more than any other market in the United States, suffers when we don't have international travelers coming to the U.S.